Now then, how are you doing? I hope you're well. You know, watercolour is a natural medium for painting skies. If you think about the nature of skies and how clouds are formed, then you begin to realise that it's all to do with moisture in the air. What better way to capture it then than with a loose water-based medium? Well, I've long held the opinion that the best skies in watercolour are often the simplest. By that I mean that a simple graded wash or a wet in wet wash is often all that's needed to convey the necessary mood and atmosphere. A particularly visually dramatic sky can potentially distract the eye from more important things happening within a scene, unless that is, the sky is intended to be the main attraction. Well, I've recently been playing around with a variety of complex skies. Here's one of them. I photographed this sky at sea from the deck of a ship, which explains the very straight, flat horizon. The most striking aspect of the scene is that backlit cloud in the centre, which is creating some lovely highlights around its outer edges and also a few crepuscular rays. Another thing worthy of note is the colour scheme, which is almost monochromatic, albeit with warm colours. Well, there are a lot of soft edges within the scene which we can envisage approaching as a wet in wet wash, but there is also a smattering of hard edges in the highlights, some stronger with greater contrasts than others. Balance is going to play an important role in the execution of this sky. Let's start by thoroughly wetting the paper with clean water. I've gone for Archer's 140 pounds rough, and I have a clear plan of action. In my head, I should be able to pull this off by establishing the general layout of the sky first with a loose wet in wet wash. Once that's dried, I can concentrate on creating a few little accents. The underlying colour I'm seeing is yellow, so cadmium yellow is my first colour of choice, followed by raw sienna. And I've applied them in such a way as to create a hazy glow from where the sun will be located. Well, I am working with my board set at a gentle angle though, which explains why that glow has slipped down the paper slightly. Well, keeping the warm ambience going, the next colour up is burnt umber, which I'm using to paint in the clouds. At which point I want to reiterate the importance of timing and say that I've given the wash about a minute before pressing on with this so that my clouds can have soft edges, yet I can still retain some sort of control. Apply it too early and the burnt umber would simply disappear into the wash, and I'd struggle to achieve any meaningful shaping of the clouds. Working quickly, I've added French ultramarine to the burnt umber to darken the mix and also to neutralise it, cool it down slightly. And as you can see, the wash is still damp, but it is soaking in and drying off as we speak, so I can't drag my heels with this. I want to build up the cloud structures while maintaining that overall softness. The minute the wash dries, I'll be getting hard edges, and then it's game over. Where to put the brush strokes though? Well, I'm taking my hints from the source photograph, of course, but I'm also happy to see what happens on the paper and sort of go with the flow. If in doubt, it's always worth remembering that clouds obey the laws of perspective, so I'm aiming to keep the clouds in the top half of the sky big and bulky, while those in the bottom half get smaller and more horizontal in appearance. Up until now, the whole sky has consisted of nothing more than a wet in wet wash. Well, I've managed to do that before it dried off, which means there isn't a hard edge to be seen. Now though, once the wash has thoroughly dried, I want to introduce a few hard edges to emphasise the backlit effect. Well, the thing is, I want this to be a subtle effect, so I've started out by reusing the cadmium yellow. Because it's a light colour itself, it doesn't jump out at you, yet it is still rich enough to create the necessary contrast and the highlight that I'm after. Also, I want to stress how the highlights it makes are not white. Instead, those silver linings are infused with the colour from the underlying wash. Overall, a far more subtle effect than if I'd tried to leave them white. I've introduced a light French ultramarine, blending it into the cadmium yellow to create a soft transition. I'm also conscious of the rays of light emanating from behind the cloud, which I'm suggesting as I apply the French ultramarine, although I will be dealing with those properly very shortly. I feel I should also explain my use of a sheet of soft tissue here, which I'm very lightly dabbing the paint to help blend it in and prevent any hard lines or backruns appearing that haven't been invited. I'm going to add a little something along the bottom of the scene to help put it all into context. The photo was taken at sea, so in reality the horizon is just a straight line, but I fancy adding some hills, and for this the obvious choice is French ultramarine, at least initially. If I switch to cadmium yellow, as you see me doing here, I can graduate the hills, which not only looks a little more visually interesting, but it also helps to emphasise the ambient light coming from the hidden sun. Which brings me to those rays of light, technically known as crepuscular rays. I'm laying down some low-tack masking tape to create the shapes of my rays. To be honest, I usually use bits of card for this, but because there are so many rays within a relatively small space, I figured the masking tape could handle it all sufficiently. Once they're all in position, I can lightly scrub between them with a stiff bristled brush. And lightly is the operative word here. If I want to maintain subtlety, then I don't want to overdo it. Lightly scrub it, then dab it dry. And when they're all done, remove the masking tape and voila. Oh, by the way, you'll notice that I've extended the rays right down over the distant hills. Well, there's a good reason for this. If I now add one final line of dark hills, which passes in front of those distant hills and arrays. It helps to push them all back and reinforce the illusion of space and depth. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, then please do hit the like button. It really does make a difference. And if you're not already a subscriber, well, then maybe consider subscribing or becoming a studio member of my YouTube channel and get instant access to the full-length version of the skies tutorial from which this has just been an extract. Well, there are other sign-up options which you'll find in the description below. In the meantime, I'll see you next time. Take care.